Hi, welcome to the Parenting Podcast today. We're glad to be talking to you, and we've been talking about the importance of training your children in money matters. And so today we're going to be continuing on that subject, and today we want to talk about modeling generosity for your family. And I came across this story that I thought was really sweet and just talked about the point that we want to make today. And it was a story about a girl when she was little, and she was talking about she went to this little church, and it was a hot summer day, and everybody in the church, the men were all just dripping sweat. The women made their little fans, the little accordion fans out of their bulletins. They were fanning their faces, and the pastor kept his arms down because he had all the sweat rings under his arms. It was so hot that day. And so she remembered seeing all of that. And then the next Sunday they came to church, and there was a ceiling fan up in the middle and was going around. And of course everybody was gathering under it and talking about, how good that breeze feels and all of that. And I wanted to read this part to you because when the pastor started the service, then he said he wanted to thank the anonymous donor of the ceiling fan. And so then it goes like this. She said, who do you think it was? I asked my mom after service as church members lingered, laughing in the benevolent breeze. She smiled and whispered, it was your dad. Although the rest of the world has probably forgotten the mysterious arrival of the ceiling fan, I still feel proud when I recall Dad's donation. He didn't have to contribute millions or make the evening news, but his small but meaningful act sank deep into my heart and my memory. And I thought that was really good in talking about the impact that her father's gift had on shaping her life.
That choked me up when you read that the other day. It choked me up again.
It's so sweet. And you had something in your life that your dad did that you were aware of, that maybe others weren't aware of, that he shared with you.
Yeah, I worked with Dad for a number of years, and so we got a lot of time to share with each other. And my dad was a church man. He loved the Lord, loved the church. And I remember talking with him one day, and he was talking about the fact that we built a new church when I was just a kid. I remember when the foundation in the basement was in, and as a kid we were walking around the walls of the concrete block basement before they built the church on top of it. And then we got married in that new church.
We did.
And I remember talking with Dad one day about building that new church, and he said he voted against it. He was not in favor of it. They were a congregational ruled church, and he voted against it. And then it must have been a few years later in another conversation, we were talking about money, and it just came up that he said he gave $100 a month. He pledged $100 a month to pay off the mortgage on the new church.
Wow, that was a lot back in those days.
That was a lot. And it just struck me. I said, Dad, I thought you said you voted against the church, against building the church. And he said, yes, I did. But once it was voted in, once we voted it was something we did. And so he gave to support it. And just that commitment and that generosity, because I knew where we were and how hard my folks were working. And to know that they gave $100 a month toward that church, that was huge. Especially when it was not really his preference for it to take place, but he had such a heart to be a blessing, to see the kingdom of God and the work of God go forward, that he was willing to do that.
Yeah, his example of generosity. He was a generous man, and he wasn't a rich man, but he was a generous man.
It really touched my life. It was one of those things where as a young person, that was after we were married. We were first married. It was just, and there was not a lot of money for us then either. But it just dropped something in my heart about this is how we do, this is how it ought to be done, this is how you ought to live. And yet it became a part of who I am today, just in that moment.
Yeah. So I guess we're not talking about just being like, oh, I paid for that, and I paid for that, and I paid for that. but there are certain times when our children need to know that our family gave this. And granted, most of our giving isn't maybe as visible as that. Maybe most of our giving is, just the normal everyday. We're all, putting our money in the pot, so to speak, of the church, and bills are being paid. Maybe it's the toner, maybe it's the air conditioning bill instead of the ceiling fan. And maybe our everyday giving is not a big deal, but children need to know that you're giving and it matters. It's serving the Lord and putting His kingdom first.
I know a guy who was sitting in church just in the last couple of years, and it was down south, and the pastor said that day, and it was a hot day that day in that sanctuary, and the pastor just said, we'll get the air conditioner fixed. Yeah, if you want to write a check for $5,000, we'll get it fixed. When he said that, this person I know said the Lord touched their heart, and his wife even said, I knew what you were going to do. And he went up to the pastor afterwards and said, are you serious? For $5,000 you can get the air conditioner fixed? He said, yeah. And so this man sat down and wrote him out a check for $5,000. And I'm so proud of him, for doing that. It's just what a wonderful thing to have resources and use your resources. Be willing to use them like that. He deserves a pat on the back.
He does. When you catch your kids doing something generous, this is a great time to give them an attaboy.
Attaboy.
You know what an attaboy is? Attaboy.
Attaboy.
Yeah, to really encourage them when you see them sharing whatever, when you see them taking their little tithe and giving it to the Lord, just give them a a bump or a high five or whatever they're storing up rewards in heaven too. God's no respecter of persons, and with their generosity they'll get rewards, but you as a parent can help that in their lives, help mold that part of their life by encouraging that when you see it. So remember to give your kids the attaboy when you see them being generous as you have modeled for them. So have a great week. Thanks for watching today.